Talk to me about dealing with that complexity of batch building in relation to having that underlying base set of infinite code context.
Right. So that is a unique challenge, as you described it, in its own, right? And the struggle really, if you look at the Reddits for anyone using Cursor, Copilot, or all of those tools, is that they expect, they write a lot of prompts to the agent, and they create like a PRD file or a spec file that explains the code base. So the users are really trying hard to give it the context that the model should have.
Yep.
But this model now is dealing with all of that context and all of their code base.
Yeah.
And then Cursor doesn't even give you the entire context window unless you're using the max mode that they just released, right?
Yeah.
So Cursor is already cutting down that context window. There are other tools that do not do that, but the problem does not change, right? The fundamental problem is the agents are overloaded with context, and as a user, you have no control over that. All you're doing is working with your code, and giving it some prompt, right? Hoping that it does what you think, but it's frustrating when it does not.
Yeah.
We've solved for that an exact problem, right? Let's put that into more context. An agent working on the database for a project that has database as one of the components, right? That agent does not necessarily need to know about the UI. All it needs to know is the schema that the UI uses, if this is linked to the UI or the backend. Right?
Yeah.
As long as it knows the schema and as long as it knows the requirements and the kinds of data that it has to deal with, that agent is good.
Yeah.
Right. If you overload it with the UI, and you can have hundreds, if not thousands, of UI screens and widgets and components, it is going to be distracted.
Yeah.
Right. And the same applies whether you're working with APIs, whether you're working with CI/CD, any part of the entire system. So if what we've done to achieve this is to slice and dice your code and make it specifically relevant to that particular agent, so that one agent only works on that piece of code, right? And even before that, as a starting point, ground all your designs in a single technical specification document. So that document that we were chatting about as a first step, you generate that, you review that. If that is good, when you modify that document and maybe request to add a feature or refactor and hit build, we're going to pick up specific sections and hand them off to that agent. And that agent also has the ability to look up other sections if they need to, right? So sometimes you need more context. That agent can go and look up additional sections, additional files, search the entire code base.
Yeah.
So we really enable the agents to do their thing.
Yeah.
And from our side, we just make sure that we're limiting how much information we're dealing with. And ultimately, the models themselves are really good, is what we've seen. And they're great at solving these tasks for us.
Yeah. It's sort of like if you had an engineer working on the DB, like where does their area of work rub up against the next person, right? And like, what do they not care about at all? And if you know about that for sort of every piece of technology, or at least you're able to codify that for every piece of technology and every part of the stack, then you're able to set the system up for success.
Right. And you bring up a very important point about collaboration, right? Human collaboration is what sets everything going, right? It is impossible for a single developer, for example, to work on a certain size of code base. There's a threshold, right, where that becomes really hard and challenging. So that's why you bring in multiple developers, you have them review each other's work, and multiple developers have multiple areas of expertise, which is also true with our agents.
Yep.
They are specifically purpose-built for the tasks that they work on.